the panel members of our last panel, who would be discussing roadmap to resilience through logistics planning, innovation, and collaboration. I would like to invite on stage Rajesh Neelakanta, Executive Director and CEO, BVC Logistics; Mayur Chhabra, DGM Supply Chain at Del Monte Foods; Rituraj Saha, Head Supply Chain, Pernod Ricard; Chetan Kumria, Managing Director and CEO, Xcell Supply Chain Solutions; Padmini Pagadala, Sales Head Consumer and Pharmaceuticals, Mahindra Logistics; Vikas, Kalra, Ex-Assistant General Manager, Logistics and Supply Chain at Hero MotoCorp; Shanmukh Singh, Enthusiast at Institute of Supply Chain Management. I would request Shanmukh to please lead the discussion ahead, and attendees to type in your question and send it to us. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank the speakers for accepting to participate in this town hall. I would also like to thank the audience for showing up today. This will be the final panel of the ISCM virtual town hall on roadmap to resilience through logistics. The first panel discussed the challenges in logistics and warehousing industry. The second panelists discussed how to leverage technologies in logistics and supply chain to reduce cost and minimize waste. Coming to the third panel, we will discuss new school supply chain, logistics design, and how we can leverage logistics to plan, innovate, and collaborate across functions to create resilient, reliable, sustainable, bionic, robust, and agile supply chains of the future. So, resilience is one of the many buzzwords that have been overused by professionals across the industry today. Resilience needs to be looked at in a much more broader sense in the current context. Apart from building resilience in our supply chain, we need to embed resilience into our systems, processes, and organizations. The need of the hour is that we build resilient economies so that developmental advancements are not reversed. There is a fine line between good and bad growth. Good growth is often not reversible and is usually a byproduct of collaboration, innovation, planning, visibility, and transparency. May it be a micro entity like a firm or a macro entity like the economy. Both are highly complex systems. Thus, we need visibility and transparency to look through the complexity for operational planning, isolating solutions, or risk mitigation strategies. Now that we have considerable visibility through the use of technology of the complexity at hand, we need to plan, collaborate, and innovate to navigate through this. Having said that, let's hear from the two people on this panel who have spent their careers as logistics service users and now have ventured into providing these very services and solutions. Padmini, I would like to start with you. How important is it to include a logistics team and partner in planning?
Thank you, Shanmukh. Although I did work for Flipkart, I have to say that I was still the supply chain provider for them, all right? So no surprises there. It's very important to involve, be it your supply chain partner within the organization, or if you're outsourcing it, be it your 3PL, it is very, very important. The fundamental function of any supply chain is fulfillment, right? Making sure the right product is at the right place at the right time. And like you rightly mentioned, in India, we're fortunate. Growth sometimes is almost a certainty, but growth comes from unexpected quarters, right? This is where I think the business have to sit down with their supply chain partners and say, look, this may happen, X situation, X may happen, situation, Y may happen, and situation, Z may happen, right? Mr. Amit also talked about it in the last session when he was talking about technology, right? Having technology is going to increase your price. The same way, when you bring in your supply chain team and discuss contingencies with them, yes, your supply chain team is going to increase the cost of it. But if you don't do that, the price you may have to pay will be very, very heavy. And that's a really bad situation where in the end, you end up doing what you want to do, but you have to pay a heavy price for it. So if you're the category person, you need to bring in your supply chain team and say, look, I may plan a sale beyond 15th of this date. If I don't hit my numbers, that's possible. Or you may have to share with them, look, I'm planning to add a bunch of distributors 3 months down the lane. That may happen or may not happen. These are things that you need to sit down and discuss with your supply chain partners, right? So a bad thing is that you're fulfilling your customer's order at a high cost. But what is even worse is that a customer walks into the store or comes online and says, "Hey, I want to buy your product," and your product is simply not there on the shelves or on the store. So the worst case scenario, literally for any business, is the loss of business. It's like losing so much money on the table. So this is the worst case that can happen if we do not involve our supply chain partners in the decision making or in the planning or in the contingencies when we are at the planning stage.
Thank you, Padmini. Moving on to the second question. How do you integrate your logistics to end-to-end supply chain planning? Chetan.
Hi, good evening to all. It's a very interesting question and it's been around for many years now. I've been a user of supply chain services all my career for the last 20 years. And for the last 3 years, I have also been a service provider. So it's an exciting journey that I have seen. In my view, planning and logistics are like, mind and hands and legs of the body. That's how I always relate to it. Planning is always the mind and logistics is always the hands and legs. So if the mind and hands and legs are not coordinated together, I think no business will work as per the expectations. So that's where we need to have an integrated approach to planning and logistics whenever we are discussing long-term planning or it's a short-term planning. I've always, encouraged my teams, which is both the logistics and the planning team, to come together and discuss the roadmap, the 5-year roadmap, 3-year roadmap, as well as the short-term 3 months to 6 months roadmap when we are doing S&OP planning. So it's never that the logistics is separately sitting in another room and planning is sitting in another room and they are doing their own work. It never works in that way. Having said that, I think, while working with the food and beverages industry and some clients, we also saw that, we being the logistics service provider now, we also work with clients on providing an end-to-end planning, design and delivery solution, which is important to get the right approach, because we have seen traditionally the service providers are just called on to the last stage when the RFQ is done, and they have said that this is the cost that you have to match or this is where you need to participate. Whereas we did an implementation for a client in FMB, premium FMB segment, where we were involved from the very basics of designing the supply chain, the imports, how would the inventory be planned, what would be the days of inventory that would be kept in a warehouse, what would be the network of the warehouses, what would be the throughput of the warehouses, and what will be the WMS approach, the barcoding approach, and how do we integrate the logistics service from delivery point of view, starting from the planning. So early stage planning is very important when you have to, deliver on a large scale. So to sum it up, I would say that, network capacity, resources, warehouse design, WMS, technology, digital, if we sit together with planning logistics in our companies and integrate the 3PL much in advance, will give us much more benefits in future.
Shanmukh, we can't hear you.
Logistics functions across organizations need to collaborate with different stakeholders to build resilience in your supply chain. Who are the most important stakeholders for an organization's logistics function, and how do you ensure optimal collaboration with these stakeholders? Rajesh, sorry.
You're on mute, Mr. Rajesh.
You're on mute, sir. You'll have to unmute yourself. Mr. Rajesh, you're on mute. You will have to unmute yourself from the control panel on your right. I don't think he's listening. Hello, Mr. You will have to
Shanmukh, his mic is on, Shanmukh. I think he's not able to communicate.
Okay.
Move to the next person.
Rajesh, can I please request you to try switching on your mic, coordinate with Jaisal, please. And meanwhile, the same question, can I ask you, Vikas, can I ask you the same question? If you're comfortable with it? Because you mentioned you were collaborating with MoT. The government can be one of the stakeholders in the process. So that is why I'm directing the question to you. Mike.
Yeah. So we are various stakeholders once we are dealing in terms of the logistic. So specifically, as we have talked a few days ago, in automotive, we are working big time with the government agencies also. So they are also one of the important stakeholders because the kind of outbound logistics we are into that require a specialized kind of a fleet. And to design those fleet in terms of achieving the logistic efficiency, we are working very closely with the government agencies like MoT and some of the other agencies which actually are validating our design of the truck. Because in terms, if I want to increase a truck design, so then I want that the CG should not disturb, it should not topple. So in therein, it comes a very important, it brings in a lot of efficiency when we can work together with various agencies. So we have enrolled IIT Delhi also. So there are a lot of stakeholders now which are working on such kind of a project. So internally and externally, they are adding some value to the process, and that's how we are able to achieve the efficiency into the processes.
Unmute yourself.
Business scenario is changing with the changes in consumer preferences, consumption behavior, and the looming uncertainty in the wake of increased incidence of black swan events. Post the pandemic, how has business changed in the food industry? Mayur.
So hi, good evening, everyone. So that's a very interesting question, and that's pertaining to the food industry. And as you all know that I'm working with Del Monte. So for Del Monte, the business has seen a paradigm shift. If I have to talk about what has been a pre-COVID and what has been a post-COVID scenario, because earlier our construct of the business was that we have a business which was 65% of B2B, wherein we were pioneers or the sole suppliers to certain QSRs, HoReCa business, and certain say top caterers and other parts of the business. However, my B2C business was only 30-35% of the whole gamut of operations which I used to have. Having said that, 24th of March, there was a sudden announcement of this lockdown, which came to everybody in the industry as if it is an out of syllabus question for any student. So we were not prepared for this eventuality, and this came to us as a sudden surprise and shocker, and we were all shocked at, oh, what has this happened and how to go about it. 6 days, 7 days, we were just trying to liaison with government to see that how can we get into these passes, because there was no clarity as such. While there was things that essential things will be allowed, but the clarification, the notification itself, it was not clear what is essential, what is not essential. So there are a lot of ifs and buts going on. 7 days post this announcement was done, we just started our business. But as the question is, I have seen a complete changeover in my business construct now. The in-house consumption has seen a spike to the tune of 200%, 250%, I must say, in my business. As on date, when we talk about when the all HoReCa channels are closed, QSRs are now trying to recover after 3-4 months of the pandemic. All your malls are closed, your eateries outside are closed, little bit of your online ordering is happening. So my business has completely shifted from a B2B to a B2C model. While I was discussing with my marketing team that all these donkey years you guys have been trying to build a business on a B2C, and you were not able to successful. But this pandemic has teach you and taught you that how do you can change your business from a B2B to B2C. So having said that, wherein we have a mix of imported and domestic, it was a you can say completely reinventing of the wheel for us, wherein we have to recalibrate all our processes and business model which we are running as one day. We have to align our production capacities, our capabilities, and that was a lot of backhaul which happened from one warehouse to other warehouse, and order pattern was erratic. So in nutshell, if I have to say, it is a complete changeover of the business model from a B2B to B2C. And yes, it came up with a lot of surprises, and it is a continuous learning. While we are 4 months, 5 months down the line to this pandemic, but still it's a learning phase, and we still keep on learning new things every day. There are new surprises which come to us every day. That's how the business model has changed.
Thank you, Mayur. Moving on, with such a sea change that businesses have gone through, greenfield change initiatives have become the need of the hour. We need to plan for agility, resilience, reliability in the supply chain. Having said that, how can we leverage technology, analytics, and data to create a seamless logistic network? Rituraj.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Shanmukh, for asking this question. So let me just give you some context about the current situation. As you have heard from Dr. Rakesh and other panelists, now we have transitioned to a new normal. New situation is going to be very different to what you used to have in the pre-COVID scenario. Okay, and then you have also heard from Mayur as to how consumer preferences are changing. We have observed significant shift in consumer preference, be in terms of pack versus interplay or brand versus interplay, or growth of one channel over other. So in light of given these changes, it is imperative that we rewire or redesign our entire value chain, including logistics network, to be able to adapt to new situation. And there are many ways by which you can adapt to a new situation. First and foremost, you can create resiliency across our supply chain to ensure that you're able to adapt to a new situation more effectively. And how you can build resilience in your supply chain? You can build resilience by redesigning your logistics network, by revisiting your inventory strategy, or by creating an alternative routes or broad-basing your supplier base, or by changing your transportation model, and last but not the least, leveraging technology to digitalize your entire logistics network. Okay, so I'll just give you a couple of examples as to how we have navigated through this situation and what we are doing to create resiliency across supply chain. So we import malts from Scotland, and we have a combination of direct and indirect hub and spoke model for storage and distribution of malts across 30 factories. Currently, we have only one hub warehouse for storage and distribution of malt. Now, post COVID, we are thinking about creating an additional hubs closer to market and closer to factories, so that A, we can reduce time to market, B, we can also de-risk ourselves from any disruption should it arise on account of lockdown in any of the hubs. C, we can also optimize cost and inventory. So that's one measures that we have taken to ensure that we de-risk ourselves from future disruption as much as possible. We have also activated alternate suppliers, glass suppliers based out of West and South zone when our North-based glass suppliers went for shutdown post lockdown. And in terms of transportation model, we are not talking about fixed vehicle models, strengthening our pool with transporters who have got their own vehicles, so that we reduce our dependency from local market. Talking about technology, let me just give you an example. We import premium whiskeys, wines from around 13 countries. So we have a system called Connect that provides us full visibility of transaction right from order placement till to dispatch to real-time tracking of vessels all the way till delivery into our warehouse. As soon as this lockdown was announced, we actually leveraged this system to assess our inventory situation in the pipeline, and we immediately calibrated our orders in close collaboration with brand companies to ensure that we don't end up with higher inventory at our port or in our warehouses. So these are the ways by which you can navigate through the situation. These are the ways by which you can create an agile and demand-driven as well as resilient supply chain.
Thank you. But we all know technology also has its days. I've seen technology do exceptional things, but I've also seen technology fail miserably. How has your existing technology lived up to your expectations? If it hasn't, what is missing in most technologies of today? Coming back to you, Mayur.
So yes, as you rightly mentioned that everything has its benefits and pros and cons. So while with Del Monte, we were using a lot of technology in terms of our integrated planning, and we were using a software which gives us a complete, you can say, visibility on my futuristic forecast, and we have a horizon of getting a 36 months rolling forecast within this tool which we use. It provides us basis the inputs, basis the historical demand trends which have fit in this tool. This tool used to give me a 36 months horizon rolling forecast that this is what you have to do, and why we are relenting upon or trying to get this amount of forecasts, because as I told you, 45% of my goods are all imported. All my categories, brands like olive oil, pasta is all imported, wherein I have got lead times of 3 to 4 months and 5 months in some cases, and some of the crops are also seasonal. So I have to look for a greater horizon of a forecast wherein I can get some visibility and then keep on fine tuning as we go forward. So we were using this platform, and this tool was also helping me for crafting my AOP numbers for the next year, for the next financial year. But having said that, as on date, the tool has become redundant. Why? Because this is a new normal. The new, you can say, the demand pattern is so erratic. As I told you, the business concept has changed from a B2B to B2C. Earlier, some of the categories which I was selling to the tune of 2x has gone to the tune of 8x. But the historical demand which this tool has pattern, that is giving me a ORI numbers now. So what I have to do now is I have to get into deeper pulse of my business, understand that what are my certain categories which are now behaving, you can say some categories are behaving very well in this new scenario. Some categories have taken a backseat. So I have to do a mix and match completely, while we are still sailing through in this ambiguous period, because we have got just 4 or 5 months of historical data. And this is, as I told you, that this is a new scenario wherein every day there is a dynamic thing, and every day something new happens. So we don't have any historical data bank as such wherein we can feed into some sort of tool, and then this tool can give me some sort of inputs, that predictive analysis. So this predictive analysis is not working right now. So right now what we are doing in terms of my stock deployment, we are using a demand-driven material resource planning, wherein we work on closely with our sales team, that what is my demand, and stock deployment has moved from a algorithm to a order book based stock deployment. So we are doing that now.
Thank you, Mayur. Logistics network design plays an important part in business operations. How can we design an agile, reflexive, as well as cost-efficient logistics network to minimize overheads and wastage? Vikas.
Okay, so as far as the logistic network design is concerned, I think this is playing a very important role in terms of driving the whole logistics strategy. But again, this logistic network design, the strategy cannot be same for every industry. Because in manufacturing or in automotive sector, the strategy is very different than the other organization, than the FMCGs and all. Herein, if I say about the outbound logistic cost, your logistic cost itself can be 10 to 15% of your total sales number. It is as high as that. So as I told, because we are using the specialized fleet to deliver the material to dealers or the final channel partners. So there, the logistic network design plays a very important role. Over the time, what the industry, specifically the automotive industry, has seen that people have started using the bigger trailers because the standardized kind of a fleet doesn't work here. So they have started sending the things in a bigger trailer, like 40-foot trailer, 53-foot trailers and all. But again, the problem what we had been facing, that we could not reach to the dealer because some of the channel partners, they were located at a very narrow spaces. We could not get into that. So then since last few years, this network designing came into place. So we started working on the various tools on the network designing, specifically on JDA tools and all, which works on a linear programming method, and which actually is helping us out to design the network. So now what we have been doing is we are kind of sending the things from here in a bigger truck. So it is more of a hub and spoke model what we have adopted. And there are the transit vehicle parks we have made in the each and every region over there. And after GST, again, we have changed our strategy, because now we could make the larger TVPs, the transit vehicle parks. So now we are sending things in a bigger truck, and from there on, we are sending the things in a smaller truck. So that actually is helping us to create the complete value chain very agile. It is making it more cost effective. We are near to the customer. We are able to react to their demand in a very better way. But again, if we are creating that kind of a network, we cannot see things only the logistic cost in isolation. We have to see the complete value chain cost. So there are a lot many things what we are looking into. We are looking into the first mile delivery cost, last mile delivery cost, what is going to my warehouse cost, my inventory management cost of that warehouse, and the administration cost and insurance cost. So in totality, we are creating those kind of a cost benefit analysis in the various region, because those kind of a constraint you have to provide to create that kind of a linear programming model, so that you can come up with a most efficient network to serve the customer in a better way.
Thanks, Vikas. Coming back to you, Rajesh, can I just check your audio once?
Yes, hello. Mic check,
Hi.
1, 2, 3.
Can you take up the same question? Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, certainly. No, I guess I'm aware of that. First of all, apologies. That was a disruption, but being a logistician, I had to demonstrate resilience, so I'm back. I had a tab on standby, so I'm back on that. Thank you so much, Shanmukh, and once again, my apologies. As very appropriately and beautifully articulated by my co-panelists on this panel, as well as the earlier panels, and as Dr. Rakesh Singh said in his keynote address, the key word for resilience in these troubled times is consortium. I put it a little differently. I call it a collaborative approach to logistics. So gone are the days that mankind has always been living as a social animal and not in islands. But then in the trade and commerce scenario, logistics was always an isolated area of activity where it was the tail of trade and commerce. So and the tail never wagged the dog. But gone are those days, fortunately, and being logisticians, being supply chain management professionals, practitioners, and teachers like Dr. Singh, we have realized that today supply chain management is, and the risks thereof, is a very key concern area in most boardrooms. So it is time for us supply chain professionals to take up the stewardship of organizations and take our center place or our place in the sun, so to say. What would help us be resilient, first and foremost, is the collaborative approach, because especially in these post-COVID scenario, COVID has actually been mutational, has brought in a mutational change, if I may say so. It has, in a sense, collapsed long-established supply chain models, and it is paving way for rebuilding newer supply chain models, which are more, though being regionalistic, they are still global. So that would be the emergence of the logistics scenario, in my opinion, in the years to come. And this change is now for good, as everybody started accepting that this is the new normal. What I would say is there are key stakeholders in any sort of a relationship. One is on the user side, one is on the provider side, as generally or traditionally been acknowledged. There is also a very strong third element which contributes very significantly to both the user and the service provider communities, and that is the regulatory, statutory, the government authorities. Fortunately, we are seeing a lot of change in these last 10-15 years. by default, by design, and what have you. Once again, I would refer to Dr. Rakesh Singh's comment about the Golden Quadrilateral and the Sagarmala and the Bharatmala projects and the programs that the government of the day and the governments of the past have resorted to. We cannot do away with each other. This is a fact that even the current government has realized, and that's how sometime a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, there was this faceless assessment scheme that has been introduced in Indian customs. And I think a couple of days ago, the Prime Minister also unveiled a faceless assessment on the income tax front. Now, these are two very big impact creating introductions, in my opinion, because these are two regulatory authorities which have been most dreaded by trade and commerce, by all businesses, be it a user, be it a provider. So by building this interface, by building this faceless interaction capability between the government and the businesses, and also facilitating, the new logistics policy, though it has come a little late. Satish was mentioning that in the first panel, but I think, as they say, der sahi par durust. So there have been a lot of recommendations that as trade bodies and trade practitioners, most of us would have contributed to that. And I'm sure the final output of that is definitely going to be very useful for all of us. So in my opinion, we need to make it very, very inclusive. If there is a possibility, the biggest stakeholder of all this is the consumer, who's getting to be more discerning by the day. The requirements, the demands of the consumer cannot be single-handedly met by just a manufacturer or a logistics service user. There has to be a very consultative approach between the other stakeholders, that is the providers, as well as the government or the regulatory authorities. So it has to be a holistic approach. I think consortium was a very right word that Dr. Singh employed in his keynote address. And collaborative way of doing business is going to bring us the resilience that we look forward to, because another similar pandemic will perhaps create a debilitating impact on the economy everywhere. No country, no business is going to be free from that. So we need to firewall ourselves against such a situation. It could be unforeseen, but then, yeah, being prepared is better than being sorry. I end my submission.
I think you're stopping. I think you can
Sorry.
go on.
Yeah, I guess I'm good with that. Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, coming to the next section, innovation. Innovation is the fuel on which businesses run. May it be innovating a process, product, or service. It always acts as a value add and also adds to competitive advantage. Thus, let's discuss some of the promising innovations in logistics that are delivering value. Vikas, I'd like to call upon you to talk about predictive analytics and maintenance, specifically in logistics route optimization planning and mapping your available infrastructure, and of course the predictive maintenance part of it too.
Okay. So thanks, Shanmukh. So as far as the predictive analysis is there, see, we are generating a lot of data these days. Everywhere any transaction is happening, either in the warehouse or in logistics, through GPS, RFIDs, through the barcodes in the warehouse, through the put-away. So a lot of data is being generated. So this data is going through to the cloud, and through the cloud, basically we are doing a lot of analysis. This is being captured in kind of some business intelligence tool. So we have various tools available. We are also working on some of the Microsoft BI tools here. So till now it was more kind of BI, business intelligence. Now the time is getting into this analytic mode. So people since last few years have now switching from the BI to the BA kind of a thing. So how these predictive tools are different? These are basically the statistical algorithm, I will say, with the infusion of the AI and the ML. So artificial intelligence and the machine learning, which is actually giving us a lot of, they are capturing the historical data, and they are helping us to identify what are the risk and opportunity we can have in the business in the coming time. So especially if I talk about the logistics sector, we are using various kind of BI tools. The SAP business object is there that we are using SAS, SAS-based tools we are using. And there are various things wherein we are utilizing these tools. One of the tool, I'll just give the example. The fuel cost is very important part once we drive the logistic cost, because fuel is consisting of around 30 to 40% of your overall logistic cost. So how we can predict that what way the fuel will go? So this kind of a predictive analytic tools are basically helping us out to drive that, okay, what have been the previous trend and what are those common factors which actually are driving, what are those micro and macroeconomic factors which are affecting the fuel price. So that actually helping us in terms of budgeting our expenditure in terms of the fuel. Express freight can be one thing which very extensively we are working on. Number of the percentage returns to our warehouses, that is also another thing which through these kind of a predictive tools we are using. But one of the very important thing what we have noticed over the year is what kind of a data we are capturing. So that we can do this kind of analysis is very important, because it is kind of a garbage in garbage out kind of a thing. So the data what we are capturing through some WMS system or the TMS system, that is very important. So if we can capture the right data at the right point in time, then it will be easier for us to do this kind of a predictive analysis, specifically in the logistic and the supply chain domain. So I think for a logistic manager, it is very much important. So not only to look into the outcome of those predictive analytic tools, but looking into the things from where we are generating the data and what kind of the data wastages are there which we need to exclude, so that we can have a conclusive data analysis from the incoming data into the system.
Thanks, Vikas. Moving on to the next innovation, let's talk about hyperlocal logistics. Chetan.
So, well, I'll come to the hyper-local logistics part, but let's look at the need of the changing, new consumer which is coming. We've all
Chetan,
heard of.
But we've spoken a lot about the changes in consumer needs and consumer patterns, and we are running out of time too. So,
let me just relate to it. It's important to relate to it at least. So there is Z, or we call them Gen Z, right? This generation Z is the user which is using internet. They are born in the era of internet, like people of 17, 15, 14 years of age. They just do not relate to without internet what their lives can be. So these are about 2.5 billion people in the world, right? And India being a young population, this forms a very important part of our population. Now these people are also have the purchasing power parity. They are earning well and they are spending more also. Now these guys, when they are these kind of purchasing power and they are forming the larger population base, these people, because of the click of the button on their hands on mobile phone or their internet or their computers, they want to order anything sitting at their home or in their offices or outside the schools, colleges, whatever. They just want the deliveries then and there. This is going to be the new norm, the new change in the consumer buying pattern. So we need to understand why hyperlocal will be more important in the coming future, right? So these guys will be looking at omni-channel of buying. They can go to shopping malls, they can sit at their homes, they can sit in their offices and buy anything. They can go to a small kirana shop next door. So these guys will be all connected. So to service them, we will need incredible levels of service to fulfill their needs. So we will need to be agile, we will need transparency, and hyperlocal will be, the last mile delivery connectivity will become very, very important in this. So within a radius of 20 kilometers, wherever the order is placed, the next door shop has to deliver it. So all these apps connectivity and hyperlocal deliveries will become very important for the future. So this is a bit on hyperlocal future and the millennials and the Gen Z and the buying patterns which will change.
Thank you, Chetan. Moving on to Rituraj, can we have your views on logistics control towers?
Well, yeah, I will try to be brief because since we are running out of time. So I think someone said that logistics control tower is not about flashy dashboard. It's about customer service level. It's about compliance. It's about the mitigation of risk arising out of, say, theft or hijacking. And it's about driving operational efficiency through analysis of transaction data. So what logistics control tower provides is a visibility of transactions and full visibility of transaction right from point A to point B. And it also helps you in providing information that you can use for driving operational efficiency. Let me just give you one example of how we actually leveraged logistics control tower to avoid issues or to navigate through tough situation immediately after lockdown. When lockdown was announced, we had around 400 plus trucks stranded on a road, and our trucks are more vulnerable to theft and hijacking. So so through logistics control tower, we could actually get in touch with transporter, and we ensured safety of our trucks as well as our drivers. Also, we kept our customer informed about the status of our incoming consignment, and we were able to avoid a single major instance of theft and hijacking during this lockdown phase. So this is how we actually leveraged logistics control tower to avoid any risk to the business.
Thank you, Rituraj. Moving on to the last innovation we will be talking about today, omni-channel logistics. Padmini.
Right. So even Chetan was talking about it. Omnichannel is going to be the reality. What might have happened in a certain number of years is fast forwarded, and some of it is happening right now, right? So really quickly, omnichannel doesn't mean that what I can buy in a store, I should be able to buy online. It's much bigger. Can I see the inventory sitting in the vendor's warehouse? Or maybe I really want one particular red dress and somebody else has ordered it but has returned it. The visibility needs to be to that extent. Or why should this get shipped from a warehouse in Delhi if I'm in Bombay, right? Maybe like Chetan was talking about, hyper local of it. There was going to be a project in Bangalore 100 Feet Road, which has a lot of retail stores. So once you walk in, there was this project, it didn't happen. The consumer, the end customer should be able to see each and every SKU, exactly like how it is when we log into Amazon or Flipkart, right? So that's the extent we're talking about. I'm not talking shoe shop 100 Feet Road. No, I'm talking about particular SKU, shoe size 7, this particular SKU is available in these 3 stores. Is the kind of extent that we are going to start moving towards, and systems are going to be very important. Visibility is going to be very important. Storing and moving and delivering of on time is something we figured it out, but making sure that it is sourced from the cheapest cost or the best service level, and the visibility, making sure a consumer can see, is going to be the crux of it. It's an ocean already, Shanmukh, but I know that we're all running short of time, so let me leave it at that.
Sure. Moving on
Shanmukh,
to the next question.
Sorry, please go on. If I can take the liberty of just introducing a bit of a trivia here in this about omnichannels and the importance of it.
Sure.
I'll not take more than a minute. It's very interesting that I'm sure most people would not know about it. Way back in 1996-97, there used to be a company called Sifi Mall. That was the first e-com portal. Sifi Mall was part of Satyam Infoway, the infamous Satyam. I was part of AFL DHL, providing the logistics for the first e-com company in the country. So we had this concept of omni-channel there, where we had to, the look, touch, feel was a very key criteria for selecting any merchandise those days. So the concept of omni-channel sales is about over 2 decades old in India, at least. Only thing is that was not the time for e-com to grow, so we failed miserably there. Happy to see that it's getting a revival now. Thank you. That was just a bit of trivia.
Thank you, Rajesh. Moving on to planning and forecasting. Planning and forecasting as functions have been rendered redundant by some of the proponents of agile, flexible, and reactionary supply chains. In my opinion, no planning and forecasting amplify the complexity in the supply chain. How can we leverage the logistics function to deal with such complexity? This is an open question, and any two panelists can answer this.
Okay,
Whoever
let me
answers
take
first.
a quick check. Yes, I go first. Right. I think Mr. Sanjeev was very elegant about it. He said there has to be a balance between agility and efficiency, right? That's the crux of it. Any amount of complexity can be modeled by a supply chain person, right? There is a certain cost to it. Now, in the world over, in this pandemic, we saw that certain supply chains broke down, right? That is because the people who designed it, they knew about it. Nobody expected, like Mayur said, out of syllabus question, nobody thought a pandemic like this was going to happen. So the business leaders who made decisions at that point must have said, no need for this buffer. Let's increase the utilization to 95%. They made a conscious decision. They're not wrong. They made the best possible decision at those times, right? But who knew it was going to change like this? So my simple point is every supply chain, every business needs to have a blue book. That is, this business can operate from here to here. Outside of this is out of syllabus. We cannot serve you this, or till this, the cost is going to increase for us to serve this, right? So this kind of a blue book is every supply chain person has to write it for their own business, or if they are a 3PL, they need to write it for that client. And you need to ask it if you're the category manager for that to happen. So in effect, I'm saying most complexity can be modeled, can be put on pros and cons sort of it on the table. That's what I mean, and you should demand for it, and you should make it. And you should make it now if you don't have it. It's never too late to start making. So that's my answer, Shanmukh.
Any other panelist wants to answer this
So
question?
I think I will also add inputs to that, Shanmukh. As rightly mentioned by Chetan in his inputs, he said that while planning is the brain, your logistics is the hands and legs of any any system, any supply chain. While people will say that yes, why to have buffers, why to have some sort of inventories, let's work on jet. But as on date, if you see, the demand pattern has gone completely erratic, haywire. And as I told that we have mix of imported, and all of a sudden imported categories like pastas and olive oils and Italian certain range was doing very well for us. So what we have now done is that I was telling that there is a shift, complete shift over in the categories, how they are behaving now. We are now closely collaborating with our sales team, with our demand planning team, and the logistics team. So all three teams had, you can say, closely collaborated, started collaborating now. Starting April, we have started a new process of planning. Earlier, we used to have a demand plan, which the demand planner used to share with us, and then basis that plan, we used to deploy stuff and everything was done. Now, since April, we have taken a two-pronged approach, wherein there are two plans. One is a top-down plan, which is, you can say, come basis some inputs from my tool, which I just told you. Then there are some category teams which are sitting in a head office right now. So everybody is at home. But yes, what is happening in the market, they don't have any, you can say, complete knowledge about it. What is happening on the ground at the point of sale. So what we do every week, we are now closely getting, you can say, into meeting modes with our sales team, respective region, because every region is behaving differently now. So with that regional team, we are trying to take a bottoms-up plan, and then we are trying to marry it with my top-down. And then once I know that this is what is happening in that particular geography, I'm leveraging my planning piece or at a bottom-up planning, and then sending it to factory for production. So what I am doing a course correction every week now, so that I don't end up with any buffer inventories. At the same time, I should not lose the opportunity which is amply there in the market. So this is how planning, sales, logistics, everybody is now collaborating better. And I think that's the way forward for I think next 6 months to go. Till the time we know some patterns, how it is behaving.
Thank you, Mayur. Yeah. Moving on to the last question of the day. The new school supply chain talks about planning and collaboration through innovation and digitalization for continuous improvement of the supply chain. Supply chain and logistics networks across the world have proven to be fragile and marred with bottlenecks. In the wake of uncertainty, how do we redesign our logistics strategy to deliver competitive advantage for our business? Can I have a panelist on this?
Yeah, let me just briefly talk about it. So, so as you're aware that this this black swan event, it has exposed fault line in our supply chain. I'm sure across companies, across industries, we would have realized where our fault line lies. It is very important that we understand those fault lines and rewire our supply chain and logistics to be able to meet such kind of disruption should it arise in future. So it's important that you do an assessment of your value chain, try and understand how do you how do you want to redesign your entire network, be in terms of logistics network or transportation model or inventory strategy, so you are better prepared to meet this kind of situation in future.
Thank you, Rituraj. Can I have one more panelist?
Yes. Yeah. So in my view, I think, post-pandemic, and when we were going through the pandemic and we are still going through the pandemic, collaboration on every front is required. When we are working in an organization and running a business, collaboration in terms of the front end, which is the sales and marketing, the finance, because cost becomes a very important factor because all the business is shut, the fixed cost is increasing, then we need to also work along with our HR departments because the people, the capability that we have built over the years, we should not lose that in just 1 or 2 months. I think being resilient talks about all these things while we at supply chain work at the back end and provide a base to all of these collaborations internally within the organization. At the same time, we also should look at our vendors, service providers, as well as our extended business partners. We should work along with them, provide them ways and means, and also help them financially as well as in terms of resources, because the companies which are into manufacturing, which are multinational companies, have deep pockets, whereas their extended business partners do not have those deep pockets, and they have been working with them in thick and thin. So I believe it's a responsibility of all larger companies to support their business partners who do not have that large pockets in order for them to sustain in a longer run, and that in turn is the true innovation and collaboration that you can bring through. That's my.
Thank you, Chetan. To make effective strategy in the face of uncertainty, leaders need to institutionalize strategic foresight, harnessing the power of imagination to allow dynamic collaboration between planning and operations. Managing the uncertainty of the future requires many innovative and integrative tools, some of which have similar or even overlapping functions. Backcasting in the present, contingency planning, crisis simulation, accurate and good quality forecasting, horizon scanning, scenario planning, trend analysis, and war games or stress tests are useful tools that help us navigate through complexity of uncertain, turbulent, volatile, and ambiguous times. It is precisely in this context of uncertainty that the real opportunities lie to gain competitive advantage through strategy. How to get started? Invite the right people to participate, identify assumptions, drivers, uncertainties, and floaters. Imagine plausible but dramatic different futures, inhabit these futures, isolate strategies that will help you navigate the multiple possible futures, implement these strategies, and ingrain the process. It takes strength to stand up against tyranny of the present and invest in imagination. Strategic foresight makes both possible and offers leaders a chance for legacy. Having said that, I would like to conclude the session. Do you take some questions? We have exceeded the time, but I'm ready to take questions if you guys are ready.
Yeah, we are ready if you're asking us.
So I'm just taking 2 questions, the first 2 ones. Can we add and integrate our logistics solutions with drone technology? From Subham Biswas.
Would you say that again?
Anyone?
With no technology or known technology?
Drone. Flying drones.
Oh, okay.
So if I can take a go at this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Padmini,
please,
go
Mr.
on,
Rajesh.
please.
No, go ahead, Mr. Rajesh.
Yeah. So, Shubham, drone basically is another mode of conveyance. So it has already been integrated with quite a few logistics practices globally. In India, of course, we have some regulatory challenges. In fact, the reason why I wanted to comment on that is I have been part of a team of 3 people who have made some representations to the government to get this cleared for logistics companies to use. So the responsibility of managing the drones and having unique IDs, etc., is supposed to lie with the logistics companies once this is pretty valid, and it would perhaps in the foreseeable future become a reality in India too. Over to you, Padmini.
I think you've covered
Padmini,
it.
you have many questions lined up. I'll ask you another question.
Sure.
Okay.
Happy to.
So, good afternoon, madam. I would like to ask a general question to you. My question is that how effective is linear regression? Okay, this is a question on procurement. Let's take some other question. We have seen in the past, this is to you again. We have seen in the past all these consumer companies making decisions in house and asking logistics companies to implement. After this COVID scenario, do you see any change in their strategy? Will they be involving 3PLs more in the decision making and the planning process?
Great. What's the name of the person who asked this question?
Sandeep Nagpal.
Sorry?
This is exactly what we spoke about the other day. Yeah, Sandeep Nagpal.
Great. Okay, great. So Sandeep, this is an excellent question. I think I might even know Mr. Sandeep Nagpal. So by means of these conferences, I'm sure we're all propagating the same thing, that if you're a consumer company or if you're any company, involve whoever is designing your supply chain. It could be in-house, it could be your 3PL partners. That is really the best practice. And Sandeep, I hope that they will embrace it, because end of the day, all of us have to win. And that's the point of this conference as well. The collaboration is what we've been talking about, right through and through. So if we all have to win at the same time, again, one of my colleagues says this, there is no competition in logistics. Everybody can be a peer, everybody can collaborate together in order to deliver what is needed. I think some bit of change is what I'm saying, but I think still a long way that needs to go, Sandeep, and hopefully we will get there.
Can I just add to this?
Chetan, add to this? Yeah, please.
So, traditionally, most of the companies work around with consultants, big four. They can be EY, PwC, BCG, Bain, etc., and all, who come, advise, and then go. It's a great advice. They charge a lot of money, and they spend some time, and then that's it. Whereas there is a challenge between the 3PLs, because 3PL in India have not evolved to that level where they can be a consultant as well as a solution designer as well as implementation partners. I think there is a gap between the consultants and the service provider, which we are trying to fulfill, and we have worked around with 2 projects where we have designed the supply chain and also delivered it on the ground. So I think that is the gap that we need to fill. So I think it's a journey. We are all living it. So my purpose of coming onto the other side of the table was exactly this, that having spent 20 years on as a user, I will be able to design and implement solutions and deliver those solutions, rather than just saying that, okay, this is it, this is the handbook, now go and implement for the next 2-3 years.
That's a great point.
Thank you. I would like to answer this question too, actually. So we identify ourselves as 3PL. I think that's wrong. If you are a consultant along with a logistics service provider, you identify yourself as a 4PL. If you are a solution provider on top of that, you identify yourself as a 5PL, not a 3PL. You don't remain a 3PL anymore. So if you become a 5PL, as you said, in India, I don't think it's the logistics function has evolved up to 5PL, but yes, we do have consultants in the logistics sphere who also provide services. So we need to start evolving what we identify ourselves as. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Jason.